usually, oh, I started, I got myself a new one because I like to mix my coffee with my tea. So I got a new one. And I've been making it. I got like 9 years. Ours lasted a long time. Yeah. Like both of ours?
Okay, it's 6:32. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, roll call. Grace, we'll start with you tonight.
Grace Simonson.
Ann Pierce.
Eliza Druley.
Karen Haritono. Lila Adkins. Heidi Draper.
Tim Broderick.
Pam McLeod.
Eunice Landry.
Jay Fitzpatrick.
Matt Chizokis.
Jason Henry.
Carol Locke.
Randy Pelletier. Rebecca Johnson.
Okay. We are ready for our first public input. Do we have any public input, Megan? No? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close public input.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda of February 7th?
March 7th.
March?
Please don't.
Oh, the agenda, sorry. I was looking at minutes. Anything to add to the agenda?
Nope.
You're good. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the minutes?
Yes, on page 6.
And I was asked to remind everybody to move the microphones and speak.
On
Good news
page,
is that's the last time we'll have to say that.
because I'm the only one who doesn't speak up.
No, you're
Okay.
not, but it's the last time you'll have to hear it.
Page 6, item 5, about the first World Championships. In the discussion, it says additional questions asked and answered. I would just like that to reflect my request that the school board also consider other extracurricular activities and band activities for the same type of compensation for mentors. And I think Ms. Schmierman spoke to that in the public input also, and her comment really isn't connected the way it should be to that item.
Thank you. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, we have the buildings and grounds report. I don't know if you want to highlight anything.
Nothing from Mr. Callahan's report, but regarding the anticipated ESSER-funded HVAC project on the flat roof, which is due for replacement. As you may recall, the flat roof covers the 2 shops, the kitchen and cafeteria, the auditorium and the gymnasium. We received only 1 bid and we have rejected it and are going to be back at our drawing board and coming back to you after regrouping. It was that bad.
Okay.
All right.
I know there, if I may, I know there's been an attempt to repair the sidewalks coming into the school and right in front of the building, which look horrible. They look even worse now. Do we have a plan?
We do. So initially, we had a meeting last May at which we were talking about asking the board to encumber some projects. And during that May meeting, we wanted to hire a contractor to come in and professionally repair the sidewalks. Instead, we were persuaded to keep that project in-house. So we have now solicited the names of some companies that could come in and remediate the repair that we tried to do ourselves. Remove that material and do an appropriate repair. So we're
But
looking to
even-
do that this spring.
I mean, that's cement out there, correct?
Yeah,
So
it's-
resurfacing cement, that's a special art. You can't just put a thin layer on it, which is all flaking up.
Yeah, we need to have it done professionally. We've also learned that the source of the problem has been using the wrong kind of de-icer. And that we can prevent this from happening again by simply buying a different de-icing product.
Yeah, they're known to eat away cement.
Interesting.
Those that are in the know.
I happen to have a cement driveway, so I know those things.
I'm all dirt.
Okay. Anything else on buildings and grounds? Grace, our student rep report. First of all, tell us how college visits went.
They went really well. They were very successful, very long for some of the tours, but they were great. And right now I'm deciding between College of Charleston and University of South Carolina.
Great.
So exciting.
Thank you. So as far as the school events and organization goes, the Student Council's annual Winter Carnival went really well the Friday before break. Students had a lot of fun and was filled with healthy competition and games. The National Honor Society ran their winter blood drive today, associated with the Red Cross, and it went very smoothly. There was nobody who passed out, so that was a success in my book. National Honor Society is sending a team to participate in a wheelchair basketball tournament through the Granite State Independent Living Organization and is raising $1,000 towards that organization. The event takes place on March 25th at NHTI. There are quite a few students jumping in the lake for the high school Winnie Dip to support the Special Olympics, and that will take place on March 10th. For March's Music in Our Schools Month, the National Honor Society is also running a musical instrument drive to send instruments to the local elementary schools, Alton Central and Barnstead Elementary. Tri-M is running karaoke and dress-up days every Friday to also promote positivity and celebrate Music in Our Schools Month. Under athletics, the unified basketball team had the biggest team in years with 16 players and had their most competitive season yet, with a record of 7 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie. One of our 2 alpine ski racers placed in the top 10 at the Division III Girls State Ski Meet and went on to race at the Meet of Champions, and she placed really well in the top 50% out of all the racers across New Hampshire, so that's really exciting.
Who was that, Grace?
Reese.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Boys basketball finished their season with 3 wins and 13 losses, and girls basketball finished with 12 wins and 4 losses, and they finished ranked in 4th place in Division III. There was 8 students who earned the NHBCO All Academic Team Recognition. Spring sports signups have begun, and the Winter Sports Awards night will be held this Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Grace?
The other alpine skier did very well too.
Principal's report, Jay?
Good evening. Grace has covered most of what I would have said. Thank you, Grace. In addition, she failed to mention that seniors won Winter Carnival, which is
I was trying not to brag, but
well, as class
I'll take our
president,
victory.
there we go, class president. Yeah, so congrats to the seniors who did it cleanly. That's very important to state because there's a lot of speculation about how they win. Inexperience is how they do it. Aside from what Grace did mention, in all seriousness, we're back from break. We're course selection sheets. Yesterday, we were missing about 50 course selection sheets. As of this afternoon, we were missing less than 10. So the counseling office did a great job over the past 24 hours getting those back. So a lot of that data has been inputted already. So we have the information from 8th graders as well. So we'll start compiling and determining how many sections and of what that we are going to run for next year. We are preparing for SATs that are going to take place on the 29th of this month. It'll be the first time everything is digital on the SATs. So we're working with Matt and the IT department, we're training our proctors, and everything should go according to plan. It should go smoothly. And aside from that, unless anybody has any specific questions, that's all I have.
So the 8th graders came from both schools on the same day to visit? Or
They came on different days.
Different
Yeah.
days? I was just curious about
Yep,
that.
different
So
days,
I heard it went well.
Yeah, you know, they're always an attentive group when they're here as visitors.
Right.
Once they're part of the full experience,
Yeah.
things change a little bit.
Yeah.
But right now, there's excitement, and
they
that whole
behave.
process is brand new. So you know, it's. I think for them, it's exciting enough where they're going to pay
Right.
attention to it. And we had upperclassmen, we had underclassmen, 10th grader or 9th graders who came and spoke and answered questions.
Nice.
So it's a fine event. It's informative, and we haven't had any questions thrown at us that we haven't been able to answer. And
Good.
so.
I was also here last night for the 8th graders playing against each other. Barnstead and Alton played in the gym. They had a blast. They were rotating the kids through. I think I saw you here too. It was fun to watch.
Yep.
You know, and they're in the big gym.
And there's later this month, this is Music in the Schools month, Grace had mentioned it, so later this month, there's a district-wide concert, which they haven't done since pre-COVID,
done
so
it
they'll
all,
have,
yeah.
they'll have chorus and bands
That's cool.
at all ages playing together and being here, so, cool event.
Nice.
Thank you. Next, we have the technology reports.
You have 2 pages of technology reports, one submitted by Ms. Prosser. In your personnel report, you will observe that she's informed us that she intends to seek other employment at the end of the school year. There's a second page here that I would like to highlight, submitted by Mr. Dumond, who's been directly supervising our end-user support technician group since January 3rd. On that date, we had 600 outstanding end-user support tickets in the Zoho system. He wrote in this report that they were down to 200, but I talked to him this afternoon. I don't want to get the number wrong, 150. 143, it's gone down since I talked to him. And the majority of those are,
We have 15 that are RFP ready for pickup. The kids just haven't picked them up, and about 70 between the 3 schools that are actually in the warranty repair or waiting for parts to repair them.
we're down to under 100 outstanding tickets in the last 2 months. Not that we want to have 100 outstanding tickets, but they had a pretty big hill to climb, and they're doing a great job.
That's great.
Just to give you some context, for Concord, it's about 300 open tickets, so that was a pretty big hill to climb. Yeah.
They worked hard. The new team is very hard working. They're doing a good job.
That's great. And they're all, they're all prospect graduates? Yeah.
One of them, who I have at ACS, graduated last year.
Yeah.
And they're all doing excellent. Yeah, they all came from freshmen. So all the principals and vice principals have been happy. Like, oh, I used to teach you. So.
That's great.
We've established a new recruiting pipeline.
Thank you. Questions about technology? Matt, or curriculum and assessment?
You have my report in your packet. A few things I want to highlight. One of the things that we talked about earlier this year was taking a look at some assessments up at the high school in terms of being able to identify kids after they get out of the 8th grade, because right now the only other time we assess is at the 11th grade level. So I've been working with Jay and the school counseling department along with our IT department, and we're going to be able to do some STAR testing this spring. The goal will be to test all of our current freshmen, and then we're also going to test our current 8th graders to get a good indication of where they're at, and allow us to use that as they sign up for their courses. So they'll be taking those assessments at their schools, and Jay and a couple of his members will go over there and talk with the kids and explain to them the process and why we're doing what we're doing. The goal will be moving forward is to continue that testing in grades 9 and 10. That will give us that 9th, 10th, and 11th, even though the 11th is a different test. We can still start to look at and see the different data that comes from that. So that will begin sometime in mid-April.
Matt, I have a quick question. Is this replacing the NEWA?
Right now, no.
So
No.
they're gonna
We-
take two?
Right
three
now,
tests?
yes. So we're in conversations with both Alton and Barnstead regarding looking at a single assessment
Yeah.
moving forward,
I
so,
mean, they have to take the state test too.
yes, yep.
As
Yep.
well as NEWA, and as
Yeah.
well as this, I think it's over-testing the kids. I'm just gonna say that.
The nice part about the STAR testing is it's probably 20 to 25 minutes in length total versus the
I
NEWA,
just
which
know
is close
eighth
to an
graders
hour.
very well, you better do those first.
Yeah. That's why we're doing them in April.
Do them first, they're not gonna be receptive.
March 20th is our next teacher workshop day. The faculty and staff here will be focusing in on our definition of personalized education. The goal will be, we'll be working with Allie Brown, who is a consultant that we've been working with. She's an educator from across the country and works to accelerate transformations in teaching and learning. So we'll be working on taking that definition and really breaking it down into smaller bits and really kind of taking a look at how do we put this into practice. One of our focus areas will be working with our core values. As we've talked before, grit and intellectual curiosity are our two lowest in our core values. So we'll be looking at how do we utilize those core values and personalize education in the classroom so kids can be more successful and then build that grit and build that intellectual curiosity. So again, the goal will be to start to develop the curriculum units that we have, start to develop those with that focus on personalization. So we'll continue that. That's a continuation of the work that we started back in October. We have submitted a part of our grant to send a team to a workshop on social emotional learning. We're focusing on the impact of the anxiety and depression that currently exists throughout the state and throughout the country. We've understood that following the pandemic, we're being asked to do more and more to support the emotional well-being and mental health needs. And we're feeling that in some cases we're not as equipped as we need to be. So by identifying this group of educators in all three buildings to start this process, they'll get the skills that they need to be able to support one another, but also be able to support our schools as we move forward. So thanks to that group of people who will be getting together. And again, part of that process will be to identify the differences between avoidant and skill-based goals, because anxiety, sometimes people feel like those kids are avoiding issues versus the fact that they truly have this mental health issue coming on. Steps for increased collaboration and communication between school staff, parents, and outside providers. And then certainly look at the cognitive patterns that support mental wellness in the classroom and social interactions. Again, the ultimate goal is to create a system-wide wraparound team that has stronger knowledge base for supporting our students with the mental illness. So again, we'll be identifying that group and they will be heading to a workshop by Lynn Lyons. And the workshop is Anxiety in Schools, What Works and What Doesn't for Educators. Lastly, I'd like to thank Megan and Missy Connors for inviting me into their classroom. They were doing an activity called The Great Escape, in which students had to figure out how to calculate the width of a river, but also then find the length of the ladder that would get the over the river, but up on the cliff as well. And they had a mirror, I believe, a meter stick, and some tape, and a whole bunch of stuff. And it was really great to see the problem solving in action. Kids were asking great questions, but what impressed me the most was the feedback from the teachers. It was inquisitive. It wasn't, here, this is what you should be doing. They kept pushing back into look at your resources, look around you. I believe the majority of them figured it out. It was interesting because one team was like, oh, it's decimal points. We don't have to worry about those. And so we talked a little bit about why decimal points do matter. But again, thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. So, and I look forward to going into other classes as well. So. That's it.
Thank you. Questions for Matt? Superintendent report.
So, what so far looks like my biggest error of the day, but we'll see, is that I've given you two things both labeled personnel report, but they're actually different. So my report, it should read report to the joint board. Item number 1 is open enrollment op-ed. So that's what you want to be looking at. And if you care to, scratch out personnel report. It's my report to the board. I wrote the attached piece. It's stapled to this report that you have in front of you, and submitted it to the Baysider and the Laconia Daily Sun on Friday. I've heard back from the Daily Sun, one of their editors, and I communicated yesterday, and they plan to run this this Thursday. We'll see about the Baysider. And I think I emailed this to you already, but now I've put it into the record here as well. Quick update on winter sports. We've executed all of the paperwork required by the NHIAA to establish the girls ice hockey co-op beginning next year. And in case we haven't talked about it recently enough for everyone to be aware, we've had a developmental club for middle school students learning how to wrestle. So they did, I think, 4 weeks or so last summer in August here at the high school. They've been wrestling at ACS, but this is open to students from both Alton and Barnstead due to space constraints here at the high school this year. They've been doing that this winter, and I hope to see that happening as a middle school through 9th, maybe 9th and 10th grade. Still a club, not a sport yet, but the idea would be to be positioned to start a varsity program perhaps the year after next. I'm hoping to see us work out the scheduling so that we can hold that here as well to make it easier for students from both towns to attend. On strategic planning, I just owed you an update on branding. We haven't done much since the last time here except collect some feedback, so I get it. The typography looks good, the colors are good, people are passionate about their athletic logos, and we're going to make some changes, and we will include students in those conversations. I think we can do what we need to with the website, with the type, color, and basic iconography without changing any athletic logos right now. So that allows us to continue to move forward with our website, which should launch in April. So I think we have what we need for that, and we can continue to work on those logos that people feel more passionately about. The other thing about strategic planning is that I'm ready to cry uncle and outsource this because we're busy. So we've reached out to the consultant who did Alton's last strategic plan facilitation to see if that's something we could get done for the entire system, all in one effort, that we don't try to lead ourselves. I do want to continue. One of the reasons I've held on to this for so long is because I do think it's very important that this board has set strategic objectives. Whoever ends up doing this for us, it's important that this supplement does not supplant, to use the language of federal grants, that work that you've already done. Because you've been doing it for years. You know, this board has done, I think, an extraordinary job, starting before I even met you, working together and figuring out what the most important things are and pursuing those together. So while a community-wide, stakeholder-driven, inclusive, collaborative, strategic planning process is healthy, it's got to support your work, not replace your work. So we'll outsource it and get something rolling soon. Sorry. I'm waiting for the chief of police to respond on our draft of the revised MOU. In the meantime, we did, in our first conversation about it, talk about the manner in which the SROs access surveillance systems, which some of you know has always been sort of important to me in these agreements. And his request, which I thought was very reasonable, was that we simply put a display in the SRO's office that monitors all of the exterior entrances to the building in real time. So this means that we do not have SROs who should be working with students and walking around and doing things in the school surfing on a surveillance system, but at the same time, when they do have to be in their office, they have real-time views of all the entrances. That just seemed really reasonable. So we met, Jay, Andy Callahan, Heidi and I, and Mr. Dumond, And it turns out, you're not going to be surprised to hear this, that Matt and his team feel that this is something they can handle internally and are already working on it. And while we're at it, we're going to put the same thing, a static display that shows, that surveils our exterior entrances in real time in the front office also, so that the folks who work there in Jay's office have one of those as well. So if we need any money, we'll get back to you, but it looks like something we can do out of the current year budget. Oh, and while we're at it, so due to this year's proposed budget, it might be more difficult to provide constant coverage of the front desk next year. So part of this project would be to put an audiovisual, like an airphone type of technology, either at the front exterior door or in that front lobby, that vestibule that people are kind of guided through before they can get access to the building, so that rather than have people walking, I don't know if you've ever done it or noticed, it's a pretty long walk actually from Jay's administrative offices over to that lobby. So if we could make that process electronic, people will still have to walk over there sometimes, but maybe not all the time. So we'll get a price at least, and Jay and Andy and Matt are working on specs for how they think that would work best, so that we can do that. On facilities, I'm going to ask to skip a month on this report and bring it back to you in May. I did have a meeting along with Ms. Adkins and Mr. Henry with the operations manager from the Revolution United, who use a lot of our facilities for youth programs. And one of the complications is that their programs are a combination of private competitive programs and developmental programs for youth that are at least loosely affiliated with the town recreation department. So there's an argument there for free use of the facility, which they've been enjoying for years, but there are arguments with regards to the private club stuff that generally those kinds of organizations pay for access to athletic facilities. So there's still more work to do. We did have a meeting recently, but I need more time. Sorry. On student activities accounts, however, I do have a draft. It's only a draft, but it's our first shot. He's probably going to have some input. We'll share this with the principals at our next system-wide meeting and start our formal conversation about student activities accounts. I've shared the draft with you tonight. This is after looking at so in each student activities account, let me back up just a second. If you're not familiar with how these things work, student activities accounts are one of the trickiest financial aspects of school operations because they are generally not run by the business office, where everybody's trained and qualified to manage all of our financial affairs. Instead, they're typically run by school-level administrative offices that just need access to revolving funds for student activities on kind of a regular basis. They have to be able to write checks or reimburse or even grab some petty cash now and then. So that's why these accounts exist. What often happens, and it is unusual in an annual audit to not get at least one finding on a student activities account, very unusual. What often ends up happening is they grow into uses that aren't necessarily appropriate for them. And I'll give you an example. In a couple of our student activities accounts, we have scholarship funds. And that's just not supposed to be that way. But it makes sense. At one time over the years, a family maybe suffered a loss of a relative who was a former student at one of our elementary schools and thought, oh, this will be nice. We'll donate a couple $1,000s. We'll do a fundraiser, say it would be a GoFundMe, and then every year they can give a book award or $100 or whatever it is to a high school graduate. That money really doesn't belong in student activities accounts. It's not a legal use of a student activities account. So I've proposed this to you, and I've done a little more work on it since we last met. I should be receiving a recommendation of an attorney who can set up a 501c3 nonprofit organization separate from the school. So I'm reporting to you on this, but it won't belong to us. This would be a nonprofit organization outside of the school district that exists for the purpose of funding scholarships for high school graduates from Alton and Barnstead, or students who graduate from this school. That's a detail that the board of that nonprofit, don't all raise your hands at once, will have to figure out once it exists. I'm recommending this model and pursuing it because I've seen it in action and I've seen that it can be very effective. We have some complex state rules around donations made to you for scholarship purposes, then going to trustees of trust funds and things like that. And in order to clean up these student activities accounts, it seems like a good reason to start. Our attorney will work out how exactly procedurally you can legally get funds from student activities accounts donated into some kind of a nonprofit organization like the one I'm looking at having set up. If that was vague, I'm sorry, but it's going to make sense, I promise. And I think that's it.
Tim, I had a question about the ice hockey. I had a couple of parents who approached me about boys.
Yeah.
And obviously we voted for the girls because that made sense to me. Was that generated from the coaches asking for the girls?
I asked the same question, Ms. Locke, and the answer is, and actually Mr. Jazokis has more experience with the NHIAA than I do, but I think that what would happen, because there's only one division in the state for girls' ice hockey teams.
Okay.
So no matter how large our combined student population is, they all play in the same division. If we created a co-op for boys ice hockey where there's more than one division, then the NHIAA would look at the combined enrollments of the two high schools, and it might move the team up into a more competitive division. Also, they don't lack for participation at the moment in their boys hockey program. So we were not invited.
Okay. That's what I told them. I said, I don't think we were invited. We'd obviously vote for it if it was brought to us, but they were claiming discrimination, so I just thought I'd let you know. They're pretty upset, because a lot of them go to Rochester or Laconia to do ice hockey, and they want to do it through school, you know? So.
First question I asked.
Okay. I'll let them know. First question you asked.
Yeah, but not that it does any good.
No, they're pretty frustrated. Okay. I always get the hard questions.
Pam just left for a minute because she has a cold. She needs to blow her nose. I suspect she'll come peek right back. And here she comes.
That's tough. I hate colds. You okay?
Go ahead, Eunice. No, I just need to blow my nose that hard.
So the next item on our agenda is actually an action items, and I believe we have a personnel report in our handouts.
You have two things. So there is a personnel report in your packet which lists a coach appointment, which is separate from the handout, and that is to appoint a varsity softball coach for this spring season.
I'll make a motion to accept James Christie as varsity softball coach.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Did it go to Debbie? Sandy?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion on the other one too?
So the other one is one of the two things I gave you labeled personnel report. So this is a memo from me, and what I am proposing is that you, and I want to, this is consistent with the joint board's past practice and each of your other two boards' practice, but I do want to point out that RSA 189.14A requires certified educators to be renominated or not by April 15th. Those who work in our schools who are not certified educators do not by law have to be renominated by that date, or in fact appointed by the school board. But this has been your practice, so this sheet is consistent with what you've done in the past. So what I've done here is I have renominated staff for next year who work at the SAU and the high school, so all SAU 301 employees, whose current appointments expire at the end of this school year. to be extended for another year. This doesn't speak to salaries. We'll set those later. We'll come back to you after I've started consulting with Jay, and we'll look at performance evaluations and things like that. And look at the amount of money in the pool once the budget's approved and all that sort of thing. So this is just for reappointment, so we can start to prepare letters to employees and contracts for when we're ready with salaries. There are a few things that I've highlighted here in my memo. If you want to talk about any of them in detail, I would suggest that it would be appropriate to do that in a non-public session.
So maybe a motion as presented?
I make a motion to accept the personnel renominations as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Or does anybody want to move it to non-public later? Everybody good? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
The second item that I provided under personnel is more of a report. I've been working with Sandy Flanagan, as you know, because it's another one of those things that I keep saying, I'll get back to you, I'll get back to you, I'll get back to you, which is also where we're going to end tonight, but there's an update at least. We've gotten through an analysis of we started with all of our non-union employees' benefits packages across the 3 school systems, and have started to compare some of the differences. All I've provided for you to look at on the next 2 pages, so you can understand the sorts of things we're encountering. These 2 pages, Heidi's favorite too, show you the different employee groups at each of the 3 schools, or in each of the 3 school districts, and the different ways in which they can elect health care. So there's a total here of 7 different employee groups, and that's in each system. But more to the point, in Heidi's day-to-day life, there are 20 different combinations of group and health plan. And there are 27 different ways premiums are paid, depending on group, health plan, and whether the employee elects single, 2-person, or family.
So you want to add some more, right?
I'm gonna suggest, and I know it's a bold suggestion, that we might want to simplify this as time goes by. And you've already started doing that. And I know that to some degree, it's getting a little worse before it gets better, because you've just added 2 new health plans in one of the districts. But that's with the idea that we can hopefully simplify into that. When I come back to you next on this topic, though, which fundamentally this is about our non-union employees, and I really am holding out hope that we can get this done by May, so that we can have it in effect for July 1st. Even if the business office knew that a principal is entitled to or is eligible for a certain percentage of his or her premiums to be paid, that would be a simplification compared to what we have now, because right now we have 3 principals and 3 different answers to that question. So in that vein, the same sorts of questions and conversations exist when it comes to sick leave buyback and sick bank provisions, which our non-union employees do not have in 2 of the districts, but do in 1. Separation benefits. In other words, if an employee has worked here for a threshold number of years, has a certain amount of seniority, and then leaves and has accumulated beyond a certain limit of sick days, do you purchase any portion of those? Well, it depends on where they work. So right now there's not one answer to that question. However, and again, you've been moving in this direction over the last couple of years. The sick bank language in your collective bargaining agreements is almost identical now. And I think we're up to 4 out of the 6 are fundamentally the same. Might be 5 now, sorry. But we're getting there. Professional development benefits. How much coursework or conference attendance or do you reimburse or pay for? Right now, again, it depends. It depends on group, it depends on district. Same thing with annuities or 403B contributions, because depending on where employees are employed, they might have one or the other, and it depends, and the amounts vary. And then there are some minor things like vision insurance that again exist some places and not others. So there's a lot to unpack, and if we can't get it done well by May, it's probably better to wait another year, but I'm still really hopeful that we can get it done well. And getting it done well by May means getting it to you in advance of your May meeting so you have time to process and think it through, right? It's not the kind of thing we can show up, I can walk in here with at your May joint board meeting and say, hey, would you please approve this? Because there's just too much to it.
So your proposal is to make non-union people uniform across the 3 districts?
More uniform.
More.
So there will always be some year-round full-time positions, some school year only full-time positions, some certified educators such as administrators, and then some non-certified staff such as custodians. So there are ultimately going to have to be some, there are some groups, there's some differentiation. Right now it's an awful lot of groups and a whole lot of differentiation.
Sure, I get it.
It was always, I think, having worked on negotiations, it was always my intent that because administrators were not part of the union, but they should follow the same percentages and plans that were offered through the union. And I actually thought that was happening, but it's obviously not.
It depends.
Administrators often negotiate when they're coming into position.
The one thing I have a couple of questions I'm just curious about. Related service providers and teachers, where do best people fit for Barnstead?
So the Barnstead, so it's the next page is the BEST employees in
Okay,
Barnstead
all right.
would be under the Category 1 CBA and the Category 2 CBA.
I hadn't turned the page.
Yeah.
I was still back on the one you were talking about. So.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. It's taken us a couple of years, seriously.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's very complex.
Yeah, you're really good at it, but you shouldn't have to be.
So good we added more.
You know, and I do think, just lest anyone walk away from here concerned, you know, we'll have established budgets for fiscal '24, you know, by May. So we need to be mindful of cost as we're making recommendations to you in these areas. It would be wonderful to think, well, let's just pick the most generous benefit available in any school to any group in every category and give that to everybody, but it probably wouldn't work. So we'll have to give you some thoughtful recommendations and hopefully put you in a position to have your own discussion and decide what you want to do.
Okay, so no action needed on that. And with that, we're to the end of the agenda. I did want to bring your attention to a letter from Kim Whittier, which I promised would go to every member at the board. It's just informational. And with apologies to Kim because of the timing, I keep forgetting to bring it. So I brought it this time. And appreciate her writing in. With that, we're to our last public input. None? Okay, great. I didn't have to give the spiel this time either. Future agenda items. Oh. And then under other business, we do have a gift for Karen. I'm not sure if she wants, how much she wants to take it since I'm sick, but just put it somewhere and don't touch it for a couple of days.
Leave it out in the
A gift
snow.
card and a card from all of us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for all you've done, Karen. We really appreciate it.
And, yes,
We're gonna miss
she's done a really great job.
attention to detail.
I'm gonna miss our evening gatherings. So I guess I'll get used to not.
She'll be watching on YouTube, right?
I just want to encourage the board to keep asking good questions, and I know that you all have the best interest of the students at heart, and that's so important.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a non-public session under personnel.
Make a motion to go non-public under RSA 91-8, 132A personnel.
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes.